In the years spanning 1933 and 1945, more than 6 million Jews, Poles, and Communists were subjected to intense discrimination and subsequent death by Nazi Germany. Being forced to wear the yellow Star of David as a mark of identification, they were marched in lines to their sad and tragic end. Innocent children lost their childhood toward a cause indulging in recovering lost German pride and prestige. What acts were perpetrated in the name of recovering German national pride? In an act orchestrated by belief in Aryan race superiority, undesirable men and women were subjected to brutal cruelty and persecution that declared the Semitic ways as inferior. Years of pent-up anger against the Jews was finally laid loose on the night of November 9, 1938, known as Kristallnacht or Night of the Broken Glass. Thousands of Jewish homes, synagogues and businesses were destroyed by the Hitler Youth, the SS and the Gestapo, marking the actual beginning of the Nazi Holocaust. The final solution was meted out in a German state-sponsored genocide, killing millions in gas chambers at concentration camps like Auschwitz, Dachau, Sobibor and Majdanek. It is believed that during the height of deputations, up to 6,000 Jews were gassed in centers designed for efficient mass killings. Behind all this, the central figure who emerged as a prime figure was Adolf Hitler, Führer to most in Nazi Germany. He was the fourth child among 6 children of custom officer Alois Hitler in Austria in the year 1889. Having failed in his attempt to become an artist, Hitler joined the Bavarian army and quickly rose in the ranks. What were the factors that enabled Hitler's rise to power? Driven by anger and humiliation caused to Germany in the First World War and the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, Hitler quickly rose to power. He joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party, leading it to craftily winning 40% votes in the German parliamentary elections of 1933. A powerful orator and a master strategist, Hitler was able to convince millions of Germans to join his regime. He promised the people a strong and resurgent nation and employed various tactics to attract the German people to his ideology, making them eventually acknowledge his leadership. Catalytic and mysterious events aided him in his becoming a dictator. One took place on the 30th of January 1933, when the title of Chancellor was conferred onto him by President Hindenburg. Another event was a fire that broke out in the Reichstag building on a night in February 1933, destroying precious records of the Weimar Republic. What tactics were used by the Nazis under Hitler? What effect did they have on the German public? Massive rallies and public ceremonies were held demonstrating the might of the Nazi Party. The ballet-like precision of the movement of the uniformed party members evoked the principles of war and violence. The mass swastika banners in black, white and red filled the consciousness of the participants with Nazi ideology. Provoking speeches by the Nazi leaders held the Germans in a hypnotic trance. Hitler's dramatic entrance to a silent audience was followed by a ritualistic rising of hands in the famous Nazi salute, Hail Hitler. He was supported by close aides Joseph Goebbels, his propaganda minister, who used the newly discovered radio, posters and the newspapers to propagate the Nazi message. Leni Riefenstahl, another Nazi supporter, showcased the German might in the famous Nuremberg rallies. Her powerful propaganda films like The Triumph of the Will united the people unconditionally, melting away any resistance. Hope flourished and prosperity did not seem too far as Hitler's economic policy brought about renewal of industry through large public works. Projects were undertaken. These included the world's first freeways or autobahns, as they were popularly known. The world's cheapest family car, the Volkswagen, was innovated by Adolf Hitler himself. Challenges were not new to Germany. This was displayed by the medal tally won at the World Olympics held in the year 1936. The Nazi theory of Lebensraum, meaning acquiring living space, was modified and made into Germany's Foreign policy during the Third Reich. What was Hitler's foreign policy? What did he do to achieve his aims? Hitler's foreign policy aimed at destruction of Treaty of Versailles, rearmament of army, reoccupation of lost territories, reunification of Germans. Germany reoccupied Saar region in January 1935. In June 1935, it signed the Anglo-German Naval Pact. It also remilitarized the Rhineland, thus breaching the Versailles and Locarno Pacts. In 1936, Germany signed the Anti-Comintern Pact with Italy and Japan, thus creating the Rome-Berlin-Tokyo axis. In March 1938, it occupied Austria. In the meantime, along with Germany, Italy was becoming bolder under the fascist rule of Benito Mussolini. These developments show the victory of Hitler and the weakness of Britain and France. Understanding between Germany and Italy posed danger for Czechoslovakia. The stage was set and Germany occupied Sudetenland on 15th October 1938. Soon Germany occupied entire Czechoslovakia. These acts laid the foundation for what would become World War II.
Students, let us explore the following concepts in this module. What is Fascism? What is Nazism? Causes for the rise of Fascism and Nazism. Mussolini formed the government in October 1922. Hitler formed his Nazi government in January 1933. Similarities between fascist and Nazi ideologies and policies. Key features of Fascism and Nazism.
Just a minute. Introduction. First World War had great impact on political developments in Europe. Period also witnessed emergence of the socialist movements and communist parties. As you can see, example like Benito Mussolini's party and rise of Nazism in Germany. In many countries, those movements were suppressed by dictatorship. Emergence of Mussolini in Italy as dictator, glaring example of such dictatorships. We have seen already this video.
At 6:30 p.m. on the evening of 20th April 1889, a boy was born in the small Austrian village of Braunau am Inn, just across the border from German Bavaria. He was one of the few influential men who changed the course of history. He was Adolf Hitler. His ideas and actions altered the way the world perceived terror and evil. We will now closely examine the life and rise of Adolf Hitler, as well as the spread of Nazi ideology and Nazi state by viewing the following animation. The term fascism is derived from the Italian word fasces, meaning a bundle of sticks. It symbolizes authority or dictatorship. Principles of fascism. We will now discuss the principles of the ideology of fascism, which was actively promoted by Benito Mussolini. The fundamental principle of fascism is that everything is the state, nothing outside the state, and nothing against the state. The state is all-powerful and individuals exist for the state. Under fascism, the state is identified with the persona of the ruler. Thus, the authority of the state or ruler cannot be challenged. According to fascism, interests of individuals are subordinated to that of state. Fascism is opposed to freedom of individuals. It denies freedom of speech and expression to people. It is also opposed to socialism, communism, democracy, and internationalism. It believes in extreme nationalism and imperialism. It promoted war, aggression, and expansion of territory. Racial superiority. Let us now understand the racial viewpoint of Adolf Hitler, which defined his Nazi ideology. In Hitler's view, Germans had descended from the Nordics, or Aryans. He believed in the racial superiority of the Aryans, the master race. They were considered superior to all other races, particularly the Jews. Attitude towards the Jews. Hitler preached extreme hatred against German Jews. He blamed the Jews for the defeat of Germany in World War I. Jews were blamed for the unemployment and economic crisis in Germany. Post-war difficulties. Italy entered the First World War along with Allied powers to expand its empire. However, the Paris Peace Settlement of 1919 thwarted her ambitions. Italy had lost about 7 lakh soldiers during the war, but gained nothing. The results of war had disappointed the people in Italy. They were thus looking for a leader who would bring a strong government. Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles was signed on 28 June 1918. Its effects on Germany were as follows. Germany lost its overseas colonies. It also lost 75% of its iron and 25% of its coal deposits to France, Poland, Lithuania, and Denmark. Germany also lost its naval might. It was completely demilitarized. Germany was also made to pay reparations of around £6 billion. Treaty of Versailles. Germans felt humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles. Germany was shattered politically and economically due to this treaty. Hitler got an opportunity to launch his Nazi party to power in Germany. Nazis promised to avenge this humiliation. Economic crisis. After the war, Italy faced a serious economic crisis, leading to poverty and unemployment. Young people were recruited for the army, leading to a decline of trade and industries. The Liberal Democratic government failed to cope with the economic crisis. As a result, there was chaos and disorder. Economic crisis. There was an economic setback after the war. The war had made Germany poor. As a result, money lost its value in Germany. Subsequently, paper currency was printed. This led to the devaluation of the German mark. Hyperinflation. A hyperinflation is a situation where prices rise phenomenally high. The image of Germans carrying cartloads of currency notes to buy a loaf of bread was widely publicized. The US dollar became equivalent to 4.6 trillion marks. Failure of domestic government. Italy had unified under a democratic government only in 1860. Democracy had not yet taken strong roots in Italy. The democratically elected government failed to solve post-war problems or to establish stability. Politics in Germany. The Weimar Republic was too fragile. It became unstable and vulnerable to dictatorship. There was no single party that had a majority in the German parliament. The Weimar Republic saw 20 different cabinets, lasting an average of 239 days. It was still unable to manage the crisis. The democratic parliamentary system failed to offer solutions to the economic crisis. Consequently, the people lost confidence in the Weimar Republic. The Nazi Party cashed on the miseries of the people. Nazis promised employment to all. As a result, Adolf Hitler rose to power.
Rise of totalitarian ideologies. Ideas of German philosopher Hegel were already popular in Italy. His followers used his arguments to justify an authoritarian regime. Irrational and anti-intellectual ideas of Italian nationalist Alfred Rocco were highly popular. Its glorification of power and sheer force attracted masses. After Russian Revolution of 1917, state in Russia used terror to enforce obedience. Only one political party held power in Russia. Dictatorial ideas appealed to Italian and German masses.
Support from landlords, industrialists, and army to fascism. As a result, the ruling classes, big landlords, industrialists, and army-men used the fascist movement for their personal ambitions. They felt that fascism was the only force that could save them from socialism, which was opposed to upper-class aristocrats. They thus began to support all anti-democratic activities of fascists. High-ranking military personnel, industrialists, and big landlords supported the Nazi Party. They wanted the Nazis to crush the communists whom they feared. People voted for the Nazis as they promised them work.
Charismatic leaders. Mussolini and Hitler attracted and influenced people by their personal charisma.
The Savior. Hitler was projected as a messiah, a savior. It was believed that he was born to help people in distress. Now, students, let us answer the following question. Mussolini. A brief introduction. Let us now take a look at the life of Benito Mussolini to understand his evolution as a supporter of the ideology of fascism. Benito Mussolini was the originator of the idea of fascism. He was born in 1883. His father was an ironsmith. Mussolini was influenced by the socialistic ideology. He was a school teacher, a trade unionist, and a journalist. He was imprisoned in 1908 for his revolutionary ideas. In 1912, he started the editing of Avanti, a socialist journal. During the First World War, he opposed socialists as they were opposed to Italy's participation in the war. After his expulsion from the Italian Socialist Party, Mussolini fought the war for the sake of his nation. By the time war ended, Mussolini had got completely transformed from a socialist to a fascist. National Fascist Party. The National Fascist Party was formed in November 1921. It was created by Benito Mussolini as the political expression of fascism. It ruled Italy from 1922 to 1943 under an authoritative and totalitarian system.
Fascist Party was popular among unemployed youth, soldiers, landlords, capitalists, women, and workers.
Rise of dictatorship in Italy. The dictatorship that emerged in Italy is known as fascism. It was led by Benito Mussolini. Mussolini organized armed gangs called the Fascisti. Mussolini had the support of conservative sections of society. Confident of his support, Mussolini marched to Rome to seize the government on 24th October 1922. The Italian ruler, Victor Emmanuel III, didn't resist Mussolini. Instead, he invited Mussolini to form the government on 29th October 1922. Mussolini's corporate state. Mussolini believed in the concept of a corporate state. Thus, major industries were represented as corporations. Each corporation had a council or managing body. Together, they all constituted the National Council of Corporations. Mussolini himself was the head of the Ministry of Corporations. Fascist ministers under him put his theories into practice. These corporations, with their ministers, made rules and regulations regarding wages of the workers, working hours, working conditions.
Annexation of Abyssinia, 1935. Annexation of Abyssinia was a turning point prior to the World War II, as this also raised aggressive nationalism in Italy, which ultimately caused its downfall in World War II. Here we are going to understand about the annexation of Abyssinia and the significance of the Abyssinian War. Abyssinia, or Ethiopia, was an independent state in East Africa. Italy targeted Abyssinia as during 1896. Italian army was defeated in the Battle of Adowa, while Italy tried to conquer this region. Also, Abyssinia was rich in minerals and raw materials. But one of the main causes for the conquest of Abyssinia was to divert people's attention from economic crisis during the Great Depression.
King Haile Selassie appealed to the League of Nations for arbitration, and the League of Nations declared Italy as an aggressor and applied economic embargo.
German Workers' Party. We will now observe the birth and growth of Hitler's political career as the leader of Nazi movement in Germany. Hitler joined the German Workers' Party in 1919. He began to think big for the party. Soon he changed its name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party. The party was later known as the Nazi Party. Election of the Reichstag. Support of existing government. Eventually, Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany through political conspiracy in January 1933. He used all his powers to consolidate his position. Through the Fire Decree, he suspended all civic rights, including the freedom of speech, press, and assembly. He also persuaded Hindenburg to dissolve the Reichstag. Subsequently, he called for another election in March 1933. Hitler becomes Führer. In August 1934, President Hindenburg died. Subsequently, the office of the Reich President was combined with that of Reich Chancellor by the Nazis. As a result, Hitler became the new president. He assumed the title of Führer, that is, the leader of Germany. Thus, he became the virtual dictator of Germany. While in jail, Hitler wrote the book Mein Kampf. It contained the aims, principles, plans, and programs of the Nazis.
Following programs were listed in the book: land reforms, abolition of unearned incomes, racial superiority of Germans, that is, Aryans or master race, elimination of Jews, rejection of peace treaties, especially Treaty of Versailles.
Factories were set up to give work to laborers. Industrial and agricultural production and trade were encouraged. Facilities were provided to workers. However, the right to go on strike was forbidden. Industrial activities were strictly state-controlled. Freedom of expression. Government agencies controlled and supervised radio, newspapers, the press, magazines, books, and theatre. Even religion was brought under state control. Jews were held responsible for German miseries and evils. In 1935, Jews were deprived of German citizenship. In 1938, Jewish synagogues were attacked. Marriages between Jews and Germans were forbidden. Jews were forced to live in isolation in Jewish houses, concentration camps, and ghettos. They wore the yellow star of David on their dress. Jewish ghettos brimmed with hunger, starvation, and disease. Mass extermination. The Nazi policy of anti-Semitism reached its climax in 1942. A policy of mass extermination of Jews began. Freight cars were used to deport Jews to death chambers. Hundreds of Jews were sent to gas chambers or killed in mass shootings. Foreign policy. We will now understand the foreign policy of Nazi Germany and how it led to the outbreak of the Second World War. Hitler followed an aggressive and imperialist foreign policy. Under him, Germany left the League of Nations in 1933. The country broke the military clauses of the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler started a program of militarization and preparation for another war. The Anti-Comintern Treaty was signed with Japan. Austria was annexed in 1938 under the slogan "One People, One Empire and One Leader." The German-speaking province of Sudetenland was taken from Czechoslovakia as a result of the Munich Conference.
The next victim of the German fury was Norway. Then came the turn of Denmark, Holland and Belgium.
Later, the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact was signed by Hitler. On 1st September 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Subsequently, on 3rd September 1939, France and Britain declared war on Germany.
Anti-intellectualism. Fascists censured intellectualism, as fascism opposed the intellectual freedom of the individuals. Under fascism, common people would always follow the policies directed by the fascist party.
Myths popularized by fascists and Nazis were, "Leader is always right," "International peace is a cowardly dream," "Imperialism is the eternal law of life."
Anti-democratic. Fascists preached anti-democratic philosophy in all sense. They suppressed the civil liberties of the people. The people were taught to obey and fight for the state without any question.
Opposition against the anti-democratic activities of fascists was curbed by the armed gangs of Mussolini. Mussolini used violence and a systematic campaign for dislodging socialist movements by terrorizing people.
Imperialistic policy. Fascist policy was imperialistic in nature. Mussolini said, "Italy should expand. Italian expansion is a matter of life and death."
Foreign policy. Mussolini adopted an aggressive foreign policy. Fascists glorified war and openly advocated the policy of expansion and conquest. They pledged to bring back the glory of ancient Rome. Italy conquered Abyssinia in 1935-36. At that time, the League of Nations was administering Abyssinia. As a result, Mussolini's desire to control Mediterranean brought Italy in conflict with Britain.
Nationalism and imperialism. Nazis preached the idea of aggressive nationalism and imperialism.
Anti-communism. Fascism claimed to be neither capitalist nor socialist. Private property was protected by state. Due to rapid rearmament and industrial growth, initiative was more in government hands.
Nazism mocked at internationalism, democracy, and the ideals of peace. It opposed individual rights and socialism. Nazis promised to restore national pride. They considered communists as their greatest enemy.
Italian fascism was not anti-Jewish or racist until 1938 CE, but German Nazism was racist in nature right from the very beginning.
Till 1938, Jews in fascist Italy held important posts. Under Nazi influence, Mussolini adopted race hatred policy against Jews.
Let us now recapitulation. The period after World War I witnessed the rise of many socialist movements and communist parties in Europe. The dictatorship that emerged in Italy was known as fascism. The term fascism is derived from the Italian word fascis, meaning a bundle of royal sticks. Mussolini used violence and a systematic campaign for dislodging socialist movement by terrorizing the people. In 1939, Mussolini conquered Albania and brought Europe on the verge of the Second World War. Recapitulation. Nazism grew in Germany under Hitler. It stood for aggressive nationalism, authoritarianism, and the leadership principle. On becoming Germany's Chancellor in 1933, Hitler undertook a rearmament program. Hitler believed that the Jews were anti-nationals and inferior race to Aryans. He killed them in huge numbers and tried to establish Aryan rule in Europe. His aggressive foreign policy in expanding territory to accommodate world Aryans led to the Second World War.
Okay, so here our chapter ends. Saloni, did you understand? Are there any doubts? Are there any doubts?